And hello, everybody, and welcome to our weekly and bi-weekly, actually, Zoom chats, our Clubhouse Conversations. I am Lane Grindle from the Brewers radio broadcast team, and we are so thrilled to have you with us yet again here today for another installment of our Clubhouse Conversations. And today, former Brewers third baseman Jeff Cirillo joins us on Clubhouse Conversations. Jeff, it's always good to see you. How are you? Look at the props you have in the background. This looks good.
Right, you like that? I set that up. I'm going to take this Zoom call seriously today.
So now, okay, we've got the Wall of Honor plaque with the
Right.
mask. So you're masked up. That's great. Great message,
Yeah.
right?
Right. Got the mask. Got Adam's book that he's been telling me to take a picture of. So I thought I'd do that. There you go. If you can see that.
Nice plug for McCalvey. Yeah, buy my book.
Then I have my only bobblehead that I've ever got in my life. It's from the Beloit Brewers. So I thought I'd throw that in there. And then there's like an old book, Brewers book in there. So there you go.
There you go.
I'm ready for you guys.
We've got a nice little Jeff Cirillo shrine behind you as you talk to us. So we're excited to have everybody with us. Well, we're going to have fun here over the next 25 minutes or so. We're going to jump into a bunch of different questions with Jeff, talk about his path to the big leagues and some observations on baseball today and everything else. And Jeff spent a little time around the club this spring as well, so he'll be able to give us some observations from that standpoint. 14-year MLB career, Jeff. 8 of those, of course, with the Brewers. You left and you came back towards the end of your career again. 2-time All-Star. One of those was with the Crew. Just a tremendous career. And I know when you look back on your time in Milwaukee, you think of it very fondly because of the fans and everything that they mean to the organization. When you look back on those 8 years with the Brewers, what is it that stands out to you the most?
Well, any player will tell you no one takes care of you as good as the team that drafts you. In a baseball career, it's called diapers to diapers. They kind of rear you as a young kid, and then you come up with that team. So you only know the Brewers, and you only hear the folklore of the Robin Yount's, Jim Gantners, and Paul Molitor's and how they played, and they carried that on for the rest of us. So no one, and then even when I came back, it was like I had never left. So it was some great memories.
You had a .296 career batting average. You were a guy that hit pretty consistently throughout the course of your career. What was your philosophy with hitting? What was your goal? What was your plan when you came to the plate every time?
It was really kind of simple, and I know in today's world of technology and launch angles and all that other stuff, but mine was really, there's 3 things after an unsuccessful at bat, and I would go to, did I see the ball clearly? Was I just present with the pitcher? Not the igatas that I hope or whatever. And was I loose with my upper half or was I tight? And did I swing at strikes? And did I hit the ball where it was pitched? That was basically my mantra. And I had the ability to hit the ball the other way, no matter where the pitch was. So, and I think to hit for a high average, especially in today's game, you've got to be able to maneuver the ball where it's pitched.
I was just going to say, in today's game, being able to hit the other way is incredibly valuable. And, with shifts and everything, of course, if you're hitting the ball consistently the other way, you're not going to get shifted, which a lot of guys like to not get shifted as well, right?
Right. It's a different animal, though, because I've talked to some guys and, guys that I played with and I was never going to be one of those guys that says, well, when I played, it was a lot harder, because I think today's game is harder because of just the sheer velocity. I know when it was 95 miles an hour, it was more like the Crash Davis approach from Bull Durham, where it was like quick bat. You're saying quick bat at the plate. So the ability to, ride it out and stay back on a ball when these guys are throwing, mid to upper 90s, it's a different animal.
Jeff Cirillo is our guest on Clubhouse Conversations. And if you have questions for Jeff, you can submit those via the Q&A feature on this Zoom call. So by all means, fire away at as many questions as you want. We'll try to get as many of those in here over the next 20 minutes or so as we possibly can on Clubhouse Conversations. Your amateur career, I want to go to your time at USC. That's one of the historical programs in college baseball. The legendary Rod Dedeaux, of course, is the godfather of college baseball in many respects. And then one of his pupils took over later on, and that was Mike Gillespie. And we just lost him a couple of weeks ago. Mike Gillespie was just really one of the genuinely great guys in the game of college baseball. But I know everybody that has ever played for him has talked about the life lessons they learned, the things about the game they learned. I'm sure you were really saddened to lose Mike a couple of weeks ago, but at the same time, it's given you time to reflect on all the things you learned from him.
Oh, it's amazing. It's one of those things. Unfortunately, tragedy tends to bring people together. And we probably have a text thread going with about 30 ex-USC guys that we played with in my 4 years along the way, and Jeff Jenkins being one of them.
Yeah.
And we're on there all the time. And Mitch Gillespie, his son, has given us updates. And look, it's been about 6 months, and he was back in and back out, and it was one of those ones, and he was a fighter. And like you said, the life lessons, and it wasn't easy. That freshman year at USC, it was different than it is today, in that there was a rite of passage. He brought you into USC. It's no different than maybe like a Phil Garner or that first manager. It's almost like you had to earn. It's like, you're here now in the major leagues, or you're here now in college. It's like, okay, we brought you in, let's see what you can do. And I think that's sometimes somewhat is lost in today's game, in that rite of passage of earning the manager's respect.
You mentioned 30 guys that played at USC on a text message. It's one of the tradition-rich programs in college baseball. So, I mean, when you start talking about USC all-time greatest teams and you start throwing guys at each position in there, I mean, it's a who's who. It's major league all-stars at almost every spot, right?
It's been a very, very good history. I think there's 16 national championships now. It hasn't been that way for about 10 to 12 years. Ever since Mike Gillespie went over to UC Irvine, the program has never really gotten back on the tracks.
Yeah.
So hopefully they're on the mend and on the way back there.
We do have some questions coming in from the audience. Rick asked, Jeff, you were such a great hitter throughout your career. Who was the toughest pitcher you ever faced, and why?
A guy named Kevin Brown. He was with the Padres. He was just a right-hander, and he threw from a kind of a lower three-quarter slot. And he kind of stood out there like it was like high noon in the OK Corral. And he was a gunslinger, and he'd go and snap the ball, and he'd come down and meet you. And he worked fast. And I think I told Jim Rome this, the one time I went on the show, and he's like, well, who's the toughest pitcher you ever faced? And I say, well, it's Kevin Brown. He goes, well, why? I go, well, it's kind of like playing wiffle ball in the wind. So I've always loved that line.
Speaking of Rome, I mean, that's a little nerve-wracking, right? You're going to go on the Rome show. What was that like? Did you get yourself all prepped for that, or was it just like, okay, here we go, hope he likes me?
No, I kind of knew him, and I knew his manager, a guy named Travis Rogers. So it really
T-Raj.
wasn't. T-Raj. Yeah, so I knew him from Santa Barbara, and so it really wasn't. It's weird because you kind of play mind games with yourself, and even like Randy Johnson, who was a great pitcher back in my era, and he went to USC, so you never really felt, he's like, well, he's a USC guy. So you never, whatever you could do to kind of put a little chink in the armor to kind of level the playing field. So with Jim Rome, it was very pleasant, very easy.
Sabrina asks, what was your favorite moment as a Brewer, and who were your baseball heroes growing up?
Well, I mean, George Brett and Robin Yount were the two guys that I kind of grew up with. One was because George Brett was a third baseman, and he was from El Segundo, and Robin Yount lived, 15, 20 minutes away from me, and he went to Taft High School in Woodland Hills. So everyone knew about him from the San Fernando Valley. Greatest memory with the Brewers had to be the opening day in 2006 when I made the team out of spring training, kind of a long shot, and I got a standing ovation. It was one of those things, like kind of not a native son, but it was kind of a old player coming home.
Kyle wants to know what your feelings were when you first found out that you were traded from the Brewers.
It was not a good experience. It was weird because Sal Bando had just left. Phil Garner, they let him go. And so Dean Taylor was the new general manager. And I remember this was kind of pre-internet, not totally pre-internet, but pre-rumor mill, where you had the information up to date and what the players were doing. And I remember reading in the Seattle Times, in the newspaper, that, that I was being, shipped or being asked for by the Pittsburgh Pirates and the Montreal Expos. And I remember calling Dean, and he goes, well, I'm not at liberty to talk to you. So in those days, I got on the phone and I called Wendy Seelig. And I'm like, hey, Wendy, my name just got mentioned. And she's like, absolutely not. You're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. And literally, it's like 3 days later, I got traded. So it's like my inside source did not give me good information.
Jeff, you have I think one of the situations that I want to talk about that I think is funny and kind of ironic and unique is your last season, 2007. You're playing for the Diamondbacks, playing against the Brewers. You get a pitch. And you were a pitcher when you first came into college at USC, right? You started at USC as a pitcher, I think. So you get on the mound in 2007 against the Brewers, and I think you struck out Counsell, who was also a former Diamondback, which is ironic too. That had to be hilarious in some ways. I mean, did you get a chuckle out of that when it was all said and done?
It was great. Unfortunately, I'd only been with the Diamondbacks for about a week to 10 days.
Right.
They picked me up for the stretch and we won the division, which was fantastic. But I was only there for about a week, so my personality really couldn't shine in that moment. But Bob Melvin, who was the manager at the time, and we're playing the Brewers, and granted, if we're playing, we're probably getting our butts kicked. So Bob Melvin asked that, hey, Real, if we don't come back here in the 8th inning, do you want to pitch the 9th? And I told him, I'm like, I've been waiting 14 years to pitch the 9th. So I went down there. He's like, do you need warm-ups? I'm like, no, I'm good. So yeah, like I said, and it was hot, and I had to wear sleeves because I had this thing that I wore on my arm. It was almost like a tourniquet, kind of opened up some space in the back of my elbow. I mean, keep in mind now, I'm 38 years old,
right?
Pitching. So I've got this thing on my elbow, but you're not allowed to wear anything on your arm. Right. So I had to put some sleeves on, and we're playing in Arizona, and I am just sweating beads out there. And I did strike out Craig Counsell, which was not good for him, but I wish it would have been like Billy Hall, and it was close. Man, I have that inning on tape, and Darren Sutton, the old play-by-play guy for the Brewers, was calling the game, and it was a fun time. I wish my personality could have come out better, but I was only there for a short time.
Have you and Counts talked about it since?
I don't really bring it up to him. If he brings it up to me, I will bring it up to him. But other than that, it's one of those ones that he was very uncomfortable because I think he was in a bad slump, and then they pan into the dugout on Craig Counsell, and he just had the gas face working, right?
Real, when you look at he's giving you the ball, and as you said, you'd waited 14 years for this. Did you in your mind know what you could and couldn't throw, or is it like, hey, I'm just going to throw it as hard as I can and see what happens? Or did you throw different pitches, and did you have kind of an idea of, okay, I can throw these 3 things?
I was throwing everything up there to him. I was throwing knuckleballs and changeups. It was great because Johnny Estrada, who played for the Brewers for a short time, was a switch hitter. And Mark Grace is the color guy in the thing, and he goes, "Oh, they got the scouting report. Cirillo's got a knuckleball." So Johnny Estrada went up to the plate right-handed because I had a knuckleball. So that was kind of funny.
So they knew what to be ready for. I still love that story. I think that's amazing. Bob Melvin, you didn't get a chance to play for him for a long time there in Arizona, but you were a part and around him for that stretch run. And I know Craig has talked so much about the influence Bob Melvin had on him as a manager and some of the things that he does today. He feels like, Bob Melvin influenced him. How obvious was it that Bob Melvin was one of the top minds in the game when you were around him?
Well, I had Bob Melvin 3 times. He was my bench coach with Phil Garner. And then he managed me in Seattle when I didn't play very well for him. And then I finished with him. So I had him at 3 different times. And, he's done an amazing job with an Oakland team, and definitely found a niche for him. And, it'd be nice to see him win a World Series. He's had some great teams.
Bo Mel, right? Everybody calls him Bo Mel. All right. I want to get into your time at third base and your ability to play defense. You had 99 consecutive games without an error, major league record. I think John Wayner shares it with you. That's incredible. How often did you think about that when you came to the ballpark? I can talk to you about it now because it's over. Couldn't have talked to you about it when it was going on. How much did you think about that as it was going
on? Once it got a little life, you really don't think about, how many errors. You kind of just put it in more of a 162 game look of like how many errors you have compared to the next third baseman, right? And now they have a lot more analytics of like the true definition of a defender over there. But at the time, I knew that I was having a good season statistically as far as lack of errors. But it wasn't until I probably got to the 70 game mark that it probably started it didn't weigh on me ever, but it was one of those ones that you started thinking about down the stretch for sure.
You were around the team a little bit over the course of spring training. You called some games on Fox Sports Wisconsin. You did some analyst work back in the late 2000s, I think, too, after your playing career was over for the Brewers. But you had a chance to see this team a little bit. A lot has changed since then in the midst of this pandemic. But what were some of your up-close observations of the Brewers? And, 15 games in to the 2020 season, even though it looks a lot different, what are some of your observations now?
Well, I just saw that the arms that they have, just the quality arms in the starting rotation, and then the bullpen, and then the Andersons they brought in, and the Lim Boom from Korea they brought in. So, I mean, Stearns does a great job of just finding talent and mixing in, some younger players with some veteran players. And I've obviously, with Christian Yelich now swinging the bat better, it definitely bodes well for the Brewers.
Yeah, he's looked like himself over the last week plus or so, and that's been, I think, a very welcome sign for everybody. The game's different this year because there are no fans, and also because there's kind of an expanded roster. It's not the same thing as a normal September, but 28 players now on the roster, a few extra arms for Craig Counsell to work with, and that's been his playground, right? When he gets an expanded roster, it seems to be his strength, and he can really manage a bullpen in those spots. How different is the game when you have those extra arms to contend with and to utilize when you're a manager, in your opinion?
Well, it's always nice to have depth in both the starting rotation and depth in the bullpen. I mean, today's game is all about power arms and swing and miss stuff. And just kind of before we got on here, I looked at the stats of just the pitchers. I'm like, wow, there's a lot of strikeouts piling up there. Unfortunately on the offensive side, but on the pitching side as well. It just seems that's the way the game is. It's all about 3-run homers, the Earl Weaver approach, and swing and miss stuff.
If you have any questions for Jeff, we can still take a few more via the Q&A application or the Q&A option on our Zoom call. So if you have questions, you can absolutely submit some of those. We'll try to get some of those in before we wrap things up here on our Clubhouse Conversations. I want to go through some quick hitting stuff. We did this with Cecil Cooper on Monday. I'm always curious, favorite ballpark. Where was your favorite place to play? And you don't have to say, I mean, we can just say take County Stadium and Miller Park out of the equation, right? Favorite ballpark for you to play in?
Well, it definitely wouldn't have been County Stadium to hit in. How about that?
There you go.
Old Yankee Stadium was a great place. I always hit very well there. Statistically, I hit really well at the Pro Player Stadium in Florida, but I never liked going there. Favorite place to go would probably be a Saturday afternoon in either Yankee Stadium or Fenway, for sure.
Fenway seems to be a really popular choice. You've been to the new Yankee Stadium as well, right?
I haven't. I've never gotten back there. Yeah.
So I'd never been to the old one, and we went to the new one in 2017, and of course they tried to replicate it the best that they could. Before we went, I just remember talking to Euchre about it and him explaining the smells and the sights and everything about old Yankee Stadium. And he did because he's Bob Euchre, he did such a great job of explaining it to where you feel like you're in it as he's talking about it. And so when we got to New Yankee Stadium, you're seeing a lot of these same things, but you didn't have that feel, that unique feel of all these legends were here, right? Like there's something different about that. I mean, it doesn't have the same smells and everything else that old Yankee Stadium, I imagine, had, based upon my conversations with people that had been there. So I think they did the best they could to try to capture and keep the essence of Yankee Stadium going, but there's only one, right? And it's going to be the same thing with Fenway. I mean, they got to keep Fenway going forever. That's one of my other ballparks I've never been to, is Fenway Park. There's like 3 in Major League Baseball right now I haven't been to, and Fenway's one of them. We were going to go this year, and of course those plans changed, which, I mean, we're all dealing with the plans changing right now, but that's one I'm really excited to see. Who was your favorite teammate over the course of your career?
I had a ton of great teammates. Greg Vaughn was great. I mean, you always are really hold those close that really helped you along the way. And he was great with rookies, and he was great with me. And it's a tremendous relationship that I still have to this day with him. Mike Cameron was a tremendous teammate. Yeah. Jeff Jenkins, Mike Matheny, Mark Loretta. Look at me, I'm just rattling off all the Brewers, but I got to tell you, Jeff Jenkins is a dear friend of mine, and I even love the JJ Hardys and the Ricky Weekses of the world. So I mean, when you get to play long enough, you get to not only pick the brain of a blooming rose of Greg Vaughn, but then at the end you get to smell the roses out the door and kind of hopefully you can lend some sage advice to the younger players like a Hardy or a Weeks or a Prince Fielder.
Yeah, Greg Vaughn's going to join us on Clubhouse Conversations on the 24th, so we're excited to have Greg joining us for that. You mentioned a lot of guys, a couple of them, still involved in baseball. Matheny, a manager with the Royals. Mark Loretto, of course, was the bench coach for the Cubs last year, and another great guy that is just fun to be around. When you start talking about great guys in the game, Mark Loretto is a name that comes up for a lot of people pretty frequently. Do you guys all stay in pretty close touch still to this day? I mean, obviously you and Jeff Jenkins do. I think you pretty much alluded to that. But do you stay in touch with a lot of the other guys still too?
I do, and it's great when you run into being in the job that I had, being a scout. It gave me autonomy at home, and it gave me the ability to set my own schedule.
Yeah.
But the best thing about being a scout, in my opinion, is getting to see parts of the country that I would never see. Like Myrtle Beach or Lynchburg, Virginia, or Greensboro, just places. And every year I would try to hit a new city along the way because just it gives me an opportunity. But the best thing about that is going to the ballpark, not knowing who's going to be there, and then you're running into an old friend doing these games. Writing the reports isn't always great, but at the same time, you're running into someone like an old friend and you're watching 5 baseball games with them. So that to me is the best part, and that's one of the things that really keeps me in the game.
What did you enjoy about your experience? And we can talk about this spring when you were in the booth with Brian Anderson and the TV team. What did you enjoy about that experience the most?
What I loved about it was, because when you're a scout, you're evaluating and you're assessing and you're trying to analyze the thing. But being up there, you're part of the team in a lot of ways, and you're fluffing these guys and you're hoping for the best, especially spring training, right? Guys are working on things, and then you got what was Matthias that made the team. I'm drawing. I might be butchering his name right now.
No, you got it. That's it.
But he was great, and you could just tell that he was getting after it from day one, right? Some other guys are kind of working on their stuff, and Kane's working on his swing, but this guy was getting after it day one, and because you've been in that situation where he's just desperately trying to open an eye in spring training, and he did, right? And so he was on the team. I think now that Braun came off the DL, but he got his opportunity and he got some hits, right?
What'd you think of the new spring training complex too?
Oh my gosh, it was phenomenal. We had Chandler back in the day,
right?
And we had Marysville, but the clubhouse alone, just one of those things that those guys probably it's hard to get them to leave. Shager and Phil Roswitz and Tony down there, they're like, all right, guys, time to go. So
yeah, absolutely, guys. It's easy to hang out in that place, man. There's lots to do, and you can get lost in there really, really easily. It's hard to believe. At least for me, I spent my first 3 seasons with the Brewers, and it was Maryvale, right? And then it turns into American Family Fields of Phoenix for the last 2 springs. And so in 2019, when I'm walking around, it's hard to believe that you're at Maryvale. Like, it's hard to believe that's the same place because so much has changed, and they just did a tremendous job with it. And I know guys like you probably a little jealous that these guys have that now to work with from a spring training standpoint. It's certainly a big upgrade over what it was. You've mentioned a couple of times you scouted for a couple of different teams. I think the last time you scouted, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was in 2012 with the Angels, perhaps. The game of scouting and analytics, and I think the teams that have the most success are the ones that are able to blend both and utilize both and get them to work together. How challenging is that, though?
Well, I'm still a scout with the Angels. I've been scouting since 2019 or 2020. Even this spring, I was still scouting. It's weird because I got my coverage in before like March 12th, and then all of a sudden it was Rudy Gobert, and then we were done. It's a balance, right? They say with the analytics, it's like an aspirin. 2-3 aspirins will help the body. If you take 10 of them, you might be in trouble. So I think that there's a blend with both the scouting and the analytics, because look, if everyone has the same analytics and they're reading from the same spreadsheet, where does your advantage come from?
Hey, Derek wants to know, as a fellow Trojan, and we touched on this at the beginning, What was it like playing for Mike Gillespie at USC? And do you have any Rod Dato stories?
Rod Dato, I don't have any stories, but I went to a really small high school. And I think part of the reason I got my scholarship to USC is because Justin Dato was kind of like a scout, or he'd go out and look at players. And I think he had the eye for my mom. So I think I went way up on the depth board for recruits when he came and watched me play. That's what he says.
So I grew up just outside of Omaha, Nebraska, and so I went to the College World Series every year, and Rod Dato was there every year, and you maybe remember this, but he had a cane made out of a baseball,
Oh, yeah.
and all of his players had signed it, and he was the nicest man ever. I mean, always gracious, always willing to do an interview when I covered it later on in my life, and would always have time for everybody, and that cane was like the coolest thing I'd ever seen as a kid.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That was
And he walked around. I mean, this is a guy that was, a legendary college coach, and he would be at Dodger Stadium when we came to town, and it was like it was his playground.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God. Like, he walked around like, yeah, I should be here. So yeah, he was a charming guy, and definitely held in very high regard.
And Derek says fight on, by the way.
Yes,
as well as a fellow USC guy. Hey, I also want to ask you about, you're involved in some summer wood bat leagues as well. And what has that been like? And obviously provides great opportunity for these college kids to get more time on the field over the course of the summer, and really get some life experiences too. You get out there, you see the country a little bit, you see some towns you wouldn't normally see, maybe get a little bit of a taste of what minor league life will be like later on as well. What's that been like to be involved with some wood bat teams and providing opportunities for some of these college kids?
Well, I mean, we have the North Woods League is circa kind of in the West Coast League out here in Washington.
Yeah.
And to your point, when I retired, I was like, what do you want to do? And so I did a golf tournament back in Milwaukee for a lot of years. And the other one was, I want to provide an area for kids to, see the world and use their college experience, whether it be, trampoline them into a minor league or major league career, but to just see people from other parts of the country and to see Washington in the summer. So I own a couple baseball teams. One of them is the Sweets. You can see my mask on my face up there. That is the Walla Walla Sweets in Walla Walla. The city's so nice, they named it twice. And I've been involved this was supposed to be our 11th season, and I was going to coach this year. My son, who goes to USC, is a freshman baseball player. But unfortunately, it got banged with the rest of baseball. But it's been a fun experience, and hopefully we've made a difference in a lot of kids' lives.
Your son a pitcher, hitter?
He is a middle infielder. He's fast.
Middle infielder.
Fast.
Okay. All right. New coaching staff there. I know Ted Silva, their pitching coach, really well. So he's in good hands with that coaching staff. I think they'll do a nice job moving forward. Just short year, yeah. Hopefully they can get back and have a full season next year.
I don't know. They just canceled all the Pac-12 fall sports yesterday, so I'm not sure how baseball is going to do. It's the trying time for sure.
The Pac-12 canceled everything through December, I think, actually, through the calendar year. So even college basketball won't be allowed to start in the Pac-12 on time this coming year. It's a tough time, obviously, for
I'm not sure. Sports. Yeah, I'm not sure how that's going to work, because I know that to run the baseball team per year, it's $1 million, and that everyone is riding the football saddle, right? So,
yep, tough times in amateur sports, that's for sure. Well, we appreciate it, Jeff. It's been a pleasure having you with us. We've really had a lot of fun, and we're excited to see the Brewers try to get after the Twins here tonight and get back to 500, hopefully tonight with a win. But appreciate your thoughts and your insights, and we'll talk to you again soon down the road, okay?
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right. Thank you. Jeff Cirillo with us here on our Clubhouse Conversations, and our thanks to him for giving us the time here today. We will be back on Monday at 5:30. We'll have a new time on Monday. Monday is an off day for the crew, so we're going to be back with you on Monday at 5:30, and we'll have former Brewers GM Doug Melvin. He will join us to share all sorts of stories. I can't wait for this conversation with Doug. Doug is, of course, one of the great guys in baseball as well, and that should be just an absolute blast. So 5:30 on Monday. What is that? That's the 17th, right? the 17th. So 5:30 on Monday the 17th, Doug Melvin will join us on Clubhouse Conversations. Thank you for joining us this week. We have had so much fun. Can't wait to bring you another week of Clubhouse Conversations coming up starting on the 17th at 5:30. I'm Lane Grindle. Have a great rest of your day, everybody.